So Marshall, as you know well, I wrote a book recently. It's come out. It's released around the world, a special edition here in India, just behind me. And thank you so much for writing the testimonial, which appears on the front cover. It's really a special moment for me.
I love it.
In the book, I talk about game-changing leadership. And really, the book is about my own observations as a leader, my experiences, full of anecdotes and so on. I tell stories. And it's based on 5 E's. The book is called The E5 Movement, Leadership Through the Rule of 5. And the first E is about envision. So having a vision, a compelling vision that touches the hearts and the minds and is really about purpose, not about the what, but more about the why. And then second, taking that vision out, expressing it. That's the second E. So let's tell people about it. And in our current world, that's about omni-channel. Let's be strategic on how we actually, convey our message and share it and get people to digest it. It leads to the third E, which is excite. So people are starting to lean in, and that's a moment of truth, as we all know, as leaders, that when people are leaning in and they want to be part of it, and they're asking questions like, hey, when do we start? I've got an idea. Can I be part of this? Then you're on your way. And the fourth E, and that's kind of where I'm at now in my journey, is enable, leader as enabler. So creating that arena where people can shine, the platform, giving the tools, the support, the push, the pull, and sometimes just getting out of their way is enabling, right? And then the fifth one, of course, which is the ultimate, measurement, I would say, of effective leadership is execute. You have to, you got to bring the vision to life. It has to result in outcomes that change the world. And so in the book, I talk about that. And then, I was also thinking about how that connects with your ideas around the leader of today, but also the leader of tomorrow. If we talk about making an impact, the truly game-changing leaders, they're not about maintaining the status quo. These are leaders that are on a mission to make a positive impact on the world. And if we think about this fast-changing world, what are your thoughts on the future of leadership and future-proofing yourself as a leader?
Well, years ago, we did a study that was sponsored by Accenture, and we interviewed young, high-potential leaders from around the world. Now, what's good about our study is the study was about the leader of the future. We actually interviewed young people who would be alive in the future rather than interviewing at the time Jack Welch, who was going to be dead. So we actually interviewed people who would be alive in the future and leading the future. And we asked these very specially selected, and they were very, very specially selected. Each company could only pick 1 or 2 young leaders. So these were the cream of the cream of the cream. How's the leader of the future like the leader of the past, and how's the leader different? Now, in many ways, leadership hasn't changed at all and will never change. Leaders always need to have integrity. They need to have a vision. They have customers. They need to treat people with respect. They need to develop people. A lot of leadership was really consistent. The past, the present, the future, they look about the same. 5 factors came up, though, as different. The leader of the past versus the leader of the future. The first one is called global thinking. You're very aware of this. You're a citizen of the world. I'm a citizen of the world. I've been to 102 countries. The leader of the future thinks globally. If you look at the history of leadership, of course, was all domestic. I mean, in a cave, nobody was global thinking, right? You had a cave, you had a little tribe, you had a village, then it grew a little larger. You had a little area, you had a state, you ultimately had a country. Leadership has been 99.5% domestic throughout our history. Well, now leaders are global. You need to think globally. And what can I learn from people around the world? What can I source from around the world? Even if you're not managing everybody in a global organization, you need to think globally. The second thing is related to the first, cross-cultural diversity. The concept of diversity is becoming more and more important, but not just diversity within your country, women, minorities in your country, it's global diversity. How do we create a globally diverse environment? Then the third area is technological savvy. This doesn't mean being a technologist. What it means is today we all need to understand how technology impacts our core business and our lives. You can't escape from technology anymore. No leader is too big for technology today. Then the fourth area is building alliances and partnerships. So in the past, leadership was much more top-down. In the future, leadership is much more across. Let me give you some examples. I'm the coach of the CEO of Pfizer. for example. Pfizer is kind of an important company right now. It's just developed a vaccine, hopefully, that will save the world. I'm the coach of their present CEO and their former CEO. I'm very proud. Pfizer, everything is alliances and partnerships. They didn't develop that vaccine by themselves. They had alliances and partnerships from all kinds of people. IBM, if you look at IBM was my biggest customer years ago. In the late 80s, IBM was my biggest customer, the most admired company in the world. IBM had no alliances and partnerships, at zero, and they were proud of it. They were proud of it. We don't have alliances and partnerships. We do it ourselves. You have a card that says IBM. They were very proud of that. Today, IBM is all alliances and partnerships. So in the past, the leader was much more top down. In the future, that leader is building relationships across the organization. And then finally, you've talked a lot about this, Paul. The leader of the future is a person who manages knowledge workers and is much more of a facilitator than a boss. You've got to hear the wonderful Alan Mulally speak before, who's a great man.
Fantastic.
One of the greatest leaders in this century. Well, he is purely a leader as a facilitator. He doesn't try to be a technical expert. He doesn't talk down to people. He respects people's knowledge. And he does some of the things you're talking about, enabling people. That leader is an enabler. So back to your own terminology, that leader is an enabler who's working with wonderful people and basically enables them to do the job, not some little god that talks down to people. So those are the 5 changes from the past of leadership to the future of leadership. Let me review them again. Number 1 change is the leader of the future is a global thinker. The leader of the future is really interested in cross-cultural diversity, technological savvy. The leader of the future is building those alliances and partnerships. And finally, the leader of the future is a facilitator. It's a person who's learning through others, not a boss telling people what to do and how to do it.
Fantastic, Marshall. It reminds me also of, leadership is a series of muscles. And it takes work to build those muscles. And in one of your articles, you talked, I think you quoted Arnold Schwarzenegger. You tell the story about Arnold says, I don't put on muscle and get built by simply walking in the gym. You got to do the work.
Nobody got muscles by watching me lift the weights.
Yeah, exactly. You got to do it. And that's, I think that's a very powerful lesson that you just gave us now. Absolutely. Fantastic. Thanks, Marshall.
Thank you.
Growing up as a leader, a lot of us have always focused on the outcomes first. We talked about the outcomes. And then, we would begin a conversation with a deck and a spreadsheet and talk about how we got there. But what I've discovered this year, that needs to go to the back, and we need to talk about people. We need to show care for people and to really ask how they're doing, get a pulse check, because it all begins with that. And I'd like to get your thoughts on this idea of empathy and caring for people and how that plays into the role of the leader.